I think one of the really interesting things is that he knows Koreans use which is like our country, that it's really nice that he knows that about Korean people. 안녕하세요. 저는 제니퍼입니다. 미국 사람입니다. 안녕. 8 months now. Ashley lived almost a month and a half to almost 2 months. I was supposed to come in August of last year, but because of coronavirus, I didn't get here till November 29th. Towards Korea's winter, I liked it. I guess I liked it because it made me feel like I was at home. Winter here is very similar to the winter back where I'm from. When I first got out of quarantine, I was just really excited anyway to be out of quarantine, but they had this really like pretty snow. I wasn't real happy about it at first because I got stuck, they made us get off the bus and then I had to walk. I ended up taking a lot of pictures and it was just like really pretty outside. I really love living here so far, and I'm really finally starting to get out and do things. Since I'm going to be staying longer, I'm trying to actually learn more Korean. I want to be able to speak it and get around and like be able to communicate. So I started my lessons now officially. Learning Hangul was not hard, reading it because it's so similar to the English alphabet, but speaking and hearing is hard for me. I think Hangul is very powerful and it's a very detailed language. You know, I think that it allows Korean people to really express how they're feeling. It's fun to learn. So now that I'm learning Korean and I'm going to learn more, next time I'll show you guys because I'm going to work hard.
Essentially, I've had a love affair with Korea. I first came here in 1966 as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I was almost one of the first things that I've noticed out for me about Korea, their love for history, their interest in history. From earliest times on, Koreans were written. Staggering in part because we've lost so much of that history.
I think that's really interesting too. Hanbok?
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all. If you watch anything about history with Korean history, you know immediately what is Korean hanbok versus like traditional dress with other countries. This is anything that's being stolen from China at all. I mean, it's normal for a country to want to protect their own traditional stuff. I mean, that's understandable.
This underlying theme that we see almost from the start is the importance of cultural borrowing. Remember, this sorry part, these countless invasions. But equally important is the resistance. And that's where the Korean identity comes through so carefully. This man, Ulchi Munduk, played a major role in defeating the Swedes. Effective was his defense. Equally soldiers to Korea.
I remember reading about him. Korea has such a rich history too. It's very interesting. If you take the time to actually like read about it and stuff, it's very interesting. My daughter, she loves Eastern Asian studies. One of her favorites is Korean history because it is so interesting. And you can go throughout the city and still see lots of the historical things, which is really nice. I really would like to see this in person. So like I said, I've watched a lot of documentaries on Korean history, and I think this will be really interesting to see.
Besides these heroes, there were the average people, the common people who came forward to the defense of their kingdom.
Yeah, and I like that too about the Korean history, like how they talked about the commoners, the common people were such a big part in the growth of this country, you know, not just like noblemen.
I had to also do a comparison with Japan. And so it's interesting to look at what interests me is that Korea's military rule lasted 100 years. Japan's military, I think that in a nutshell shows you the difference between the two societies. It created a strong central state. Diffuse is much more decentralized.
Which I think is really good for Korea, that you are not decentralized.
But I think Koreans early on had a particular high level of aesthetic.
Yes, I agree with that.
Those of you who've been to Gyeongju, been to the National Museum, have looked at the Shilla project. Some of their gold work is just exquisite.
It's
or
beautiful.
If you go into the Koryo period,
I've actually seen this.
The Celadon.
That's another thing. I'd like to go and see some of the temples. Oh, the architecture is beautiful, but it's like, what is the palace called that's close by? That's one of the first places that we went, and we fell in love with the architecture because it was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful, and then like how it was painted, like the roof of it was painted. When Ashley and I went, all these girls were dressed in hanbok. It was beautiful. To be able to just like go see that on a daily basis, it's very fortunate, very fortunate. Yeah, we love this. This is one of our favorite places. It was gorgeous. And it's kind of crazy because you can go all over like different places in Seoul and you see they still have parts of the palaces with like trees and like you can see like these big giant buildings and then you see a palace. I think it's really nice that they're keeping that part of history in their city. You know, it's beautiful.
Also be seen in dance and music.
And my daughter knows a lot about this. She could tell you the difference in like how they style their hair, the type of dance they do, the outfits they wear. It's very interesting.
Superhighway buses, and you go by these buses.
And where are they going? Oh, and just on a trip. One thing I've noticed here that Korean people really love music and they're really enthusiastic about it. And even like watching this, you can see how much fun they're having. Even when you're older, you can still have lots of fun. So I think that's wonderful.
Dancing is very, very much a part of, and in this dance and the music, I think we see sort of the inner vitality, which to me brings forward both the idea of restraint and strain, and then suddenly it breaks forward and is extremely exuberant. And I think you can probably see this in several different things. Up above you have the nongak, farmer's dance, which is very much the commoner. And you go out and the gongs are ringing. In Yangban culture, and you have the kayagong, or the piri, the flute.
And this is, there's so many different types of the culture and the history and stuff that I would love to learn about.
Today, Hallyu obviously lives film.
That's how most people know about Korea to begin with because of the K-pop. But now, because Korea has become so much bigger, a lot more people have traveled here, I think it's starting to be known for other things. I think it's good.
There's probably very few societies in the world. I think Korea has probably done it more successfully. If you look at East Asia today, I think it's fair to say that Korea is probably the most open society.
My daughter and I actually talked about this. Korea is like one of the top countries in the world now. Marketing, industry, entertainment, tourism. You haven't seen a lot of progression with that country. So for Korea to come that far in 40 years is amazing. It really is. I think this professor seems to really know a lot about Korea, but I think a big part of that is because of his passion and love for Korea. Korea has gone through a lot of changes since the Joseon dynasty, but I think that the people have persevered here and have been successful creating a dynasty, a strong country. I think one of the really interesting things is that he knows Koreans use Urinara, which is like our country, that it's really nice that he knows that about Korean people and their culture. Where I'm from, it's probably a little bit more individualistic, but in Korean, it is definitely more we are, our, And I can honestly say this, where I'm from in West Virginia, it is more the Appalachian culture is our, and that's one thing I really love about Korea is that I think everybody looks out for each other. I really love that about living here. That's what makes Korea beautiful to me. Okay, so today I learned more about Korean history and how Korea has improved and become this great country. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye!